How many Deutschmarks do you want? I only got what I got, you know what I mean? This is like insane business that I'm doing. 40 million Deutschmarks? Oh my God, you know, like I can't get over this, you know, what I told you 50 times, told you 70 times. How many times am I gonna tell you, right? I'm just trying to sign into this computer right now, but I don't know the password for my computers. I can't get to my computer. Son of a bitch. When I first got into the industry, I ordered a small order. For me at the time was huge, but right now it's literally like a 5% of an order for me. And I was going and I was selling at the Meadowlands Flea Market in New Jersey, which is like, you know, basically a large garage sale, discounted stuff. It's really like a really cheap market, and everyone expects to haggle and negotiate and get really cheap stuff there. And I was selling like pretty nice crystals. But at the time I had no idea. I just got into the business. I didn't know what to sell my crystals for. I didn't know anything. I just knew like I paid, you know, X amount of dollars for this whole order, and I want to make X amount of dollars back so I can get another order or a bigger order. And we're sitting there with this beautiful booth, and I guess everything looked really nice. And we were selling at the time these agate rings, and like we were selling them for like $5 a piece. Anyway, this guy comes up to our booth. He's asking me a bunch of questions, and there's a girl with him, and I'm like, oh man, these guys are doing something. And the guy starts putting rings on his fingers, like all these agate rings, and I'm like, that's weird, because they were all like big, large agate sphere, and he puts them all 10 of his fingers, and he looks at me, and he just starts running, right? Start running after this guy, but as I'm doing it, there's like, you know, 10 people at our booth. So anyway, he was really fast too, and I'm not very fast, so he wound up getting away. Anyway, I get back to the booth, and the girl that was there with him literally has her bra is like filled, and like I don't know what to do. I don't know what's the protocol here. I can't be like, hey miss, you know, I need you to empty your bra because you have a whole buttload of crystals in your bra. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? And she ran. And she just started running. She wasn't as fast, you know. I learned a huge lesson from there, which is like stop doing that market. Also, at the time when we were doing these flea markets, I was on a 40-day fast, and so I wasn't eating until sundown, and I'm starving. I'm like so hungry. And right across from us sets up this guy baking fresh Italian bread. Right? And he's like coming over with all these breads and like putting all of these breads in my face. And I'm like starving. But I didn't do it. I kept my fast and I starved. But he was baking that delicious bread, man. I can still smell it in my heart. So one of the best pieces that we actually have is an Apiornis egg, which is coming from the elephant bird, which became extinct in 1000 AD, and the egg itself has a little hole in it. If you want to take this thing out, the egg itself has a hole in it, and pirates used to find the eggs and put a little straw inside the hole, and then they would suck out the yolk over the course of several days, and then once they were done sucking the yolk out of the egg, they would just toss it back into the ocean, and then they would eventually get buried and appear on the shorelines of Madagascar. And these are really, really rare. They're really hard to get. Most of the ones that are intact, I mean, that haven't been repaired, that have no cracks, which we have 2 of them, this is one of them. Both of them are fully intact, which is kind of uncommon to get a fully intact one, but they're actually illegal to take them out of the country of Madagascar, in Madagascar. Once they're here in the US, they're here, but getting them out of the country is virtually impossible. So to have one of these outside of Madagascar is quite a difficult task. Crazy story. We had this little kiosk in a mall, and this lady comes to the kiosk and like, oh, I got a bunch of rocks in my basement. You know, you want them? And I'm like, okay. You know, so I go and I drive to this lady's house, and I go into her basement, and she's got like I'm not even kidding, like 5,000 pounds of malachite in her basement. Animals, spheres, pyramids, bracelets, tumbled stone, like in her basement. Her husband was a malachite dealer and had passed away and left his inventory in the basement. And she was like, just take it. And I'm like, I can't take it. Because at that time, malachite was selling wholesale for like $30, $40 a kilo. And anyway, she won't take my money. She just wants it out. So I'm like loading this into my car. At the time I had like this little Scion, this little brown Scion, and I'm putting 2,500 kilos of malachite in my Scion. And all I had to my name was $300, and I'm like, please take my 300. So she took my $300, but I paid $300 for it. And then I get wind that there's a gem show in Colorado. I haven't really left the state very much at this point. I've been in New Jersey pretty much my whole life, and we had no money. And the booth was like $5,000. So we took like every penny we had. We bought this booth at the Denver Gem Show, and we get this rickety old ratchet like construction van that like pops, the exhaust like explodes when you like drive it. And I don't know if anyone's ever done a cross country trip on Route 80. It's like up, down, and the van is like got like 170,000 miles on it, and I got like literally like 10,000 kilos of rocks in the van, filled to the brim. The van's like on the wheels. We had put every dollar into it. Anyway, we get to the gem show and we find our booth, and it's the worst booth in the whole place, literally behind a column. And I take all the malachite with me, and I wind up selling it super cheap, huge mistake, and wound up saving my ass. We sold like $10,000 just in malachite. And I was able to pay for the whole trip just by selling that malachite. So it was a godsend, and quite honestly. God like gave me that material so that I didn't take a beating out there. And then we made like, probably like seven, eight grand in other material. So we walked away with a couple $1,000. But anyway, the point of it is, while I'm out there at the gem show, I meet this guy Larry, and he's a rock hound, and he owns an opal mine in Utah. He's older, he's probably like around like 65, maybe closer to 70, and he's got no one helping him mine, so he's only able to mine about 100 pounds worth of material at a clip. And I'm like, take me with you. I hadn't been to a mine myself or mined anything myself. I didn't know what it was, but I was super interested, and I'm like, take me with you. But he calls me like 2 weeks later and is like, come fly into Grand Junction, I'll pick you up, we're going to the opal mine. And I'm like, dope, done, let's go. Yeah, he picks me up in this truck, and he's got this camper, and we drive for like 4 hours into the desert in Utah. And it's just me. I thought I knew, you don't really like, you don't even like, I was like, who is this guy actually? Now that I'm in a car and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're driving through the desert, and I'm looking at him, and he's like, looking at me, he's like smiling at me, and I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? We get to the mine, and we pull over, we get out of the car, and he's like, okay, we're gonna go to sleep now. And I'm like, all right. So we go in his camper, and it's this one full-size bed camper, and he's like, okay, you sleep next to the window and I'll sleep here. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm gonna sleep in this little bed together? Anyway, this dude strips down to his underwear and gets a pistol and starts coming to bed in his underwear with a pistol. And I'm like, oh shit. Gets into the bed, goes to sleep. Now, I didn't sleep a wink that whole night. Literally, I did not sleep. I went from exhausted to wide awake. Wake up in the morning, he gets out of bed, cooks me some eggs, and we start mining. And anyway, after spending 3 days with him out there in the desert, I came to learn that that's just what, the pistol is there to protect him, just in case someone runs up on the camper at night. He has a pistol just for protection. He wasn't gonna like hold it to my head and like do some deliverance kind of shit to me. But I made it back, and it was crazy because I came back, and he's like, you can take, my pay was he let me take in my bag whatever I could fit in my bag. And so I had like probably close to 100 pounds in my backpack of lace opal. I get to the airport, and I'm like late for my flight, and the airport dumps out my bag. It just dumps out the whole thing of like, and I'm like, they're like, okay, you can take, and I had to pack the bag up and get crazy stuff, man. This particular piece is one of the biggest pieces, it's the biggest piece I've ever seen of citrine. I think it may be the biggest piece in the world. I haven't seen a bigger one. This piece was cut in half and then put into the oven in sections, and then cooked and then put back together, because the ovens are not this tall. And this is actually our piece. This piece is not for sale. I mean, obviously everything is for sale. If someone was gonna pay for my kids to go to college, then I'd probably sell it. But I would value this piece, like on the retail side, of probably like around $300,000. After being in the business for about like 2.5, 3 years, you know, it wasn't, at the time it wasn't what it is now. Back then it was mostly rock hounds. There was some new age going on, but it wasn't what it is today. Today it's like global and it's just huge, the industry. So I wasn't like killing it, and I wasn't really making enough selling crystals to like build a family and get a home and all these things that I wanted to do. And so I started a consulting company, and what I would do is I would go to businesses and they would hire me to tell them what was wrong with their business or why their business was failing. At the time I was still selling crystals, and the company that I was dealing with was going out of business. And they were like, listen, sorry, we can't supply you anymore because we're going out of business. And I'm like, well, don't go out of business. Let me find out what's wrong with the company, because you're selling a lot of materials. Something's not right. The reason that they're going under is because the government is creating like bullshit organizations and fake organizations to just suck money from them. And then at the end of the year, they're just killing them with taxes. So they're not even making enough money to kind of pay their salaries. So I'm like, don't close the company. Let me take the company and all the inventory that's kind of here in the company. While I'm out there, I'm telling the guys, I'm like, I need to go to the amethyst mines. Someone's got to take me to them. And they're like, I don't think that's a good idea. And this is like 12 years ago. I'm an American. Americans are not really hanging out where the mines are. Finally, dude's like, all right, I don't recommend you go, but there's this guy, he's taking a truck over there. He's got to pick up a haul. You can go with him if you want. I'm like, done. So the next day I wake up, go meet this dude outside of his house, and he gets in his truck. We're driving in this truck. He doesn't speak a word of English. I don't speak any Portuguese at the time. And we're driving, he's talking to me for 3 hours straight. I don't know what the hell he's saying. It's just going on. And I'm like, why does this guy keep talking? Doesn't he know I don't understand what he's saying? And we get to this road, he turns off onto this road, and it's just a straight up dirt road, and like literally driving through like twigs and tall grass. Drives over this little wood bridge over a creek. We're driving on the side of mountains, like literally looking down. The guy's wheel is like this far from the side of the mountain. Where the hell, how is this guy gonna load this truck with tons of rocks and drive back? There's no way it's happening. And I start getting really skeptical at that point, and I'm like, oh shit, was this like another bad move that I made? The guy's still talking to me, like smiling at me, and I'm like starting to sweat. I'm worried, I'm like, is this dude, these people, this dude's gonna harvest my organs. We pull up to this little shack in the middle of nowhere. He gets out of the car, two big dudes come out of the shack, and they're standing at the front of the car just staring at me, and I'm like, oh shit. So I like click, click, I lock the doors. They're just standing there staring at me, and I'm in the car, and I'm like, these guys, what are they gonna do to me? You know, because I'm like, there's no mine over here. This dude was wearing like flip-flops and like Daisy Dukes with like no shirt. Finally, after 15 minutes, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, if these dudes were gonna do something to me, they would already rip me out of the car, and they're just standing there staring at me. They were looking at me like I was crazy. So I got out of the car, and the guy comes over, and he grabs me, gives me a big hug. They had never seen an American before. It was the first time an American had ever been to their mine. We went into the mines. I got to mine a little piece of amethyst myself. I took pictures with the miners, and then eventually they asked if I would stay for the night, and they threw me this huge barbecue. I'm totally vegetarian, and they slaughter a cow and a chicken and all this. They're just slaughtering animals and just cooking animals, and I'm like eating a tomato. Like, this guy brought me a tomato from the garden because I told him I wasn't feeling well. Anyway, I'm in the backyard, and this guy's got a pony. There's like this like little pony just hanging out, wild pony. And there's a little rabbit next to this pony, and they're like friends, and they're hanging out, and the rabbit's like letting me pet him. Dude comes walking over, grabs the rabbit by the ears, brings it over to a log, and bap, chops his head off. And I'm like, ah! You know? Oh man, that was horrible. That poor rabbit. He was my friend.